Okay.
So, Hunterdon County Clerk Mary Melfi, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just wanted to start with your assessment of the elections in November. Any marked improvement from July, and what are the needs on your end in terms of better efficiency and better safety?
It was different because the primary to me, in one word, was chaos, because it was, it was handed down so quickly, no organization. We were running around trying to get, everything done, the behind the scenes, the implementation, so to speak. A lot of it the voter never saw, which is good, but from a back house end, it was chaos. Moving forward, and a primary is always different than a general, because a primary is meant for a certain select voter. It goes to a Republican, Democratic, whereas the general election is broad-based, everybody votes. And what I found was this year with the general, of course, it was a very contentious election. There were more people engaged than I had seen in a long time. What concerned me was, it was interesting that people don't understand the civics of elections. We had people voting in the primary that thought they were voting for president. After the unaffiliateds were sent the specially crafted vote by mail application where they had to declare a party.
So we had unprecedented participation in 2020, yeah, which brought forth voters who were not as familiar with the process.
Correct. I mean, there's, voters don't, unaffiliated voters don't typically vote in a primary. And this year you saw the unaffiliateds coming out and declaring, because I can say in Hunterdon County, they thought they were voting in an election, in the general election. So it was very interesting to me to, and it is my belief, and I don't know how to prove it, but it is my belief that that is why New Jersey has the rise in the Democratic registration, is due to that primary and that specially crafted vote by mail application where the voter had to declare their party.
Interesting.
So, politics is a funny thing, one year they hate the Republicans, one year they hate the Democrats. So, it's, nothing's guaranteed in political life, so.
Well, so what would you say from a mechanical jobs operational standpoint are your main needs and requirements? And particularly,
well, I'm going to stay focused on this, because it carries through to, I've been on this since the primary. I'm going to carry it through to the general, and I'm going to carry it through to A4830. The statewide voter registration system to me, is still not ready.
mm-hmm.
It was not ready in the primary. It was not ready in the general for a universal vote by mail, and it is certainly not ready for early voting.
So 4830 requires the creation of what? Voter sites, a certain number of voter sites, and it appropriates money to make improvements. In what areas? Voting machines, electronic poll books? What exactly are we talking about?
I mean, I'm not, from what I read, it looks like they're looking for a $20 million appropriation, but that's not even going to cover poll books. Mm-hmm. And, and it just seems to me that, they think that the poll book is the be all. Once we have electronic poll books, now we have everything we need to do, and we can automatically have early voting, and many of the counties are still on the Dominion system, which a Dominion machine, which I have to say, I feel bad for Dominion. to me, Dominion machines are reliable in New Jersey. The problem with Dominion is if it breaks, you can't get parts for them anymore. That's the issue with Dominion.
Which is the issue they had in Georgia in the primary, correct?
I don't know, because they had different, they didn't have the same, they don't have the DREs from 20 years ago like we have. We have the old standalone machines that are, they just stand alone, no internet access, no,
So your point is that A4830 is a half measure at best, that we still would require more legislation for a greater appropriation that goes beyond electronic poll books. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think, I think what it, I would like to see them approach it more on a business model. I mean, you just don't go open, a business and say, well, let's just say I don't want to use a restaurant because they're kind of tough, but, I want to go open a business. You just don't go from wanting to open a business to opening the business. You figure out, you come up with a business plan, and you go work with, I mean, my years in business, my private industry, my years in municipal service, my years as county clerk, I don't do anything without the input of the people that help me. If there's a new recording bill, or if I need help with recording or elections or passports, I go talk to my staff, because they work with it day to day. And I say, oh, this bill is coming down the pike. How does this affect you? How is this going to help you in your day to day? Or, are you going to have problems doing this? And, and sometimes their input is, yeah, we can do this. This is no problem. Sometimes is, we don't like this. Well, I don't care whether you don't like it. That's not my question. My question is, can you do it? And that's the way I look at our role as county clerks and election officials with the legislation. The legislators and the governor make policy. We implement policy. But when you give us a policy to implement that we can't implement, that's where you have the heads. And then we all look foolish.
Pardon me, but there hasn't been sufficient input from the clerks on this legislation. Fair point. Yeah.
No, I mean, last year was one of the worst communication years that in my 14 years I've ever been through.
Mm-hmm. You felt that you were assailed with new policies that you needed to implement on the ground without any preparation or without any financial support?
No, the financial support was there. They gave away that CARES money like they had, like it was a holiday. The financial support was there. I can't complain about the financial support, but, thank God people whisper in the press's ears, so we found out what was going on, because it's sad when you gotta hear things from the press,
Right. Well. So, are you still in doubt about the replacement of old voting machines? Does this legislation not cover that particular need at this time?
Well, I don't know, because it's still an appropriation. So at this point, they have claimed that they are going to cover the cost.
Okay. But
I haven't seen anybody give the true cost.
Right.
I've seen the $20 million, which I know $20 million isn't right. But again, go back to the statewide voter registration system. One thing we learned from last year was that thing needs a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
They were fixing things daily. That thing was a mess. And I know, every clerk can attest to, we had ballots going out to dead voters. We had ballots going out to people that had moved out of state. We had duplicate voters. Mm-hmm. None of that was fraud. It was just bad bookkeeping, mm-hmm. And that this stuff needs to be cleaned up. But that was the one good thing too that came out of it was we can clean up this database, and And we can look into doing things like the state should invest in ERIC, because there's no cross-reference on the statewide voter registration system. People are like, well, don't you fools know I moved to Pennsylvania? Well, no, we don't. Not unless you tell us.
Right.
But if you belong to this network, Pennsylvania would notify us that Max now lives in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. So a deep dive into the database is another critical priority here, that we need legislation to appropriate money to reform. Fair?
Yeah, and it may not even be money. It may just need time.
Okay.
You need to get the time right. And and right now there's not even a communication with how do we go through this step by step. And not all of it's on the clerk side. There's the election officials as well, which they have a stronger role in this than the clerks do. But you got 2-week voting before an election. You've already got people being able to vote 45 days before an election, because we've got probably one of the most permissive vote by mail elections in the country. And you call it vote by mail. If you just called it early voting, get a paper ballot, early voting, just change the name of it. But it's just they're just trying to get to the end before they figure out how to do the middle.
I understand. So what's your specific assessment right now of Hunterdon's war footing for an election? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel unsettled? Do you feel that there's a marked improvement from November 3rd? What's your overall game time assessment?
I'm confident. I'm confident in my office. I'm confident in our Board of Elections. Despite last year, we did a heck of a job. Hunterdon was #1 in voter turnout in the state with 86% in the general election. We started early. I was the first in the state to have the vote by mail ballots out. We did a real strong social media video campaign showing people how to vote the vote by mail ballot, how to, trying to get them away from the provisionals. We also had the lowest provisional count in the state. They returned those ballots. And people say, well, big deal. But it's a Republican county. Republicans typically don't like to vote by mail. They want to go to the polls. I had people, really angry that they couldn't go to the polls. Every day I was on the phone about.
Will this legislation that is before appropriations widen the possibility for people to go to the polls?
I don't know. Max, I'm old school, it's just like, if you look at the elections back in the 90s, you had heavier voter turnout than you do today. Mm-hmm. And today it's easier to vote than back in those days, if you didn't vote on election day, you didn't vote. But mm-hmm. people found a way to vote. Mm-hmm. And I guess I don't know personally what the big thing is about trying to make it possible for people to have 14 days to vote. I get it if you have a medical issue, if something comes up, there should be, if you're unable to leave your home, there's people that have reasons. There should be something to be done for those voters. But for the rest of the population, what is the big deal about voting? It's important. Why would you not do that? Everything else, you don't give somebody 14 days to get married. You don't give somebody, 14 days to pick out an operation. you have to, you know, you have to like say to yourself, you know, today is election day. And if that's the case, then make it a federal holiday. Everybody gets off and everybody goes and votes. And, you know, and the people that have to work, those are the ones that have the option to do something early, you know, because not everybody, of course, could have off. Somebody's always got to work. But I just don't, I just personally don't understand this need for all this constant ability to vote.
Constant.
The constant ability, you know, to have all this time to vote.
Right. Well, isn't the idea to distribute so that we don't have a mass concentration during the virus?
Well, during the virus was one thing, but they're not doing early voting for the virus.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing early voting because everybody else does it.
You're up for reelection this year, correct?
I am.
And what term are you running for? You've been in office since when?
I started my first day of office was January 1st, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be I'm going for my fourth term if I'm successful.
And what are you primarily interested in terms of relaying a message to the voters in 2021?
Well, I would like to do some more voter education. I'd like to kind of like do some more civic stuff, have them understand a primary, have them understand what an unaffiliated voter is,
Mm-hmm.
How you can use the unaffiliated voter, how you can be an unaffiliated voter to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I looked at it in Hunterdon, and in Hunterdon, if you looked at the Hunterdon County ballot in the primary, if you were a Democrat, you actually had nothing to vote for in the primary, except for the city of Lambertville had a municipal contest. Other than that, there was no other contests. Everybody was going to win. So if you were a Democrat, unless you lived in Lambertville, I mean, your vote would have mattered because civically, if you're one of these people that civically matters to vote, that would have made a difference. If you were a Republican, your vote would have mattered because you were picking out a U.S. Senate candidate, you were picking out a U.S. Congress candidate, and I don't know if we might have had a handful of municipal races. But, you know, just on the level of Congress and Senate, you had choices. So, you know, for the most part, Republicans had a reason to vote, whereas the Democrats, except for Lambertville City, didn't. So it makes me question about a primary. You know, of course, I'm running this year. I'm praying I don't have a primary. But, you know, I mean, if it happens, it happens, you know. I hope if I get primaried, it's because somebody thinks they're going to do a better job than me. You know, I mean, that's my belief. If you're going to run, make sure you're going to do a better job than the person that's there. So, I don't know.
My friend,
Yes.
it's a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for your time today.
Let's hope 21's a good year, my friend.
Oh, I pray it is, and I pray that you and your family are safe this year.